Story 1. The guest who is already inside. The message arrived at 11:47 p.m. Are you still awake? At first, Daniel thought it was from his girlfriend. Then he remembered she was 300 miles away. He was sitting alone inside an Airbnb in a small mountain town, halfway through a business trip that had already gone wrong twice. His flight had been delayed. His rental car had developed a flat tire. And when he finally reached the property, the owner had sent him a strange message telling him not to worry about the noise upstairs. There was no upstairs. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. Daniel stared at the message on his phone. The sender was the Airbnb host. Are you still awake? A second message appeared. I heard someone moving around. Daniel slowly looked toward the hallway. Nothing. The house was completely silent. He typed, "Yes. Everything okay?" The reply came almost immediately. "Did you let anyone in?" Daniel's stomach tightened. "No." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Don't open the bedroom door." Daniel stopped breathing for a moment. His bedroom door was directly across from him, and from the other side came a soft knock. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel stared at the door. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. Another message arrived. "Whatever you hear, don't answer." The knock came again. 3 slow knocks, then silence. Daniel had booked the Airbnb because he wanted something cheap and private. It was an old wooden house at the edge of town, surrounded by pine trees and almost completely isolated from the nearest road. The listing had looked normal. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, private parking, fireplace, mountain view. The reviews were mostly positive. Beautiful place, very peaceful, great host, perfect for couples. There had been only one strange review. A woman named Melissa had written, "The house itself was beautiful, but I couldn't sleep because I kept hearing someone walking around outside my bedroom." The host had replied, "Sorry you experienced that. The house is old, and sometimes the pipes make strange sounds." Daniel had laughed when he read it. Now he wasn't laughing. He slowly picked up his phone. "What is happening?" The host replied, "I need you to listen carefully." Daniel waited. "There is only one key code for the front door." Another message. "You're the only guest scheduled tonight." Another. "And I haven't given your code to anyone." Daniel's eyes moved toward the front door. The deadbolt was locked. The chain was secured. Nobody could get inside. At least, that's what he believed. Then he heard something from the kitchen. A glass breaking. Daniel jumped. His phone almost slipped from his hand. He remained completely still. A few seconds passed. Then he heard footsteps. Slow footsteps. Coming from the kitchen. 1, 2, 3. Someone was walking across the wooden floor. Daniel's bedroom was at the end of a narrow hallway. The kitchen was on the other side. He could hear the person clearly. Bare feet against old wooden boards. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Step. Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it. He reached for the phone. The host had sent another message. "He's inside." Daniel stared at those words. Then, "Who?" The response came. "I don't know." Daniel felt a wave of panic. He typed, "Call the police." The host replied, "I already did." That should have made him feel better. It didn't. Because the footsteps had stopped, the house became silent again. Daniel listened. Nothing. He waited. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then came a whisper from the hallway. "Daniel?" His blood turned cold. He had never told anyone in the house's name. The voice came again. Quiet. Almost gentle. "Daniel, are you awake?" He covered his mouth with his hand. His phone vibrated. The host. "Do not answer." Daniel typed with shaking fingers. "What does he know my name?" The host didn't respond. Instead, another message appeared. "Look under the bed." Daniel froze. Absolutely not. He wasn't looking under the bed. Then he remembered something. When he arrived earlier that night, he had noticed a black duffel bag underneath the bed. He had assumed it belonged to the host. He hadn't touched it. Now he wondered why the host would ask him to look. Another message appeared. "Please, you need to know if you're alone." Daniel slowly lowered himself toward the floor. His hands were shaking. He reached for the edge of the bedspread, then stopped. He couldn't do it. Something inside him screamed that whatever was underneath that bed should remain there. Then he heard the voice again, this time much closer. "Daniel." He turned toward the bedroom door. The shadow beneath it moved. Someone was standing outside. Daniel backed away. The shadow remained perfectly still. Then a finger slowly slid underneath the gap beneath the door. Daniel nearly screamed. The finger disappeared. Then another message came from the host. "The police are outside." Daniel's eyes filled with relief. He immediately typed, "Tell them I'm in the bedroom." The response, "I can't." Daniel frowned. "What?" A pause. Then, "Because I'm not the host." Daniel stared at the screen. His hands went numb. He looked at the conversation again. The profile picture was a woman. The name was the same host listed on Airbnb. But now he noticed something. There was no verified phone number attached to the conversation. No previous messages. Nothing. He scrolled upward. The first message from the account had arrived only 20 minutes earlier. "Are you still awake?" Daniel's stomach dropped. He whispered, "No." The voice outside the door answered, "I know." The doorknob slowly turned. Daniel stumbled backward. The lock clicked. Once. Twice. Then the handle stopped. Whoever was outside had realized the door was locked. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the person whispered, "You shouldn't have locked that." Daniel grabbed the small table beside the bed and pushed it against the door. He looked around for something he could use as a weapon. A lamp. A chair. Anything. Then he noticed the bedroom window. He rushed toward it. It was locked. He tried lifting it. Nothing. He looked outside. The house was surrounded by darkness. No police lights. No neighbors. No headlights. Nothing. Then his phone vibrated again. A new message. This time from the real Airbnb host. "Daniel, I just saw your message." Daniel stared. The account was different. Verified. The actual host. She had sent, "I'm so sorry. My account was hacked earlier tonight." Daniel's hands trembled. He typed, "Someone is inside." Her response came immediately. "I know." Daniel stared at the words. "Ow!" The host replied, "Because he's been inside that house before." Another message. "And he knows where the cameras are." Daniel's eyes moved toward the corner of the bedroom. There was a smoke detector above the door. He suddenly remembered the listing description. Security cameras outside property. He had assumed they were visible, but the host had said cameras. Plural. He typed, "Can you see him?" The answer, "No." Then, he cut the cameras. Daniel heard something scrape against the bedroom door. Slowly, like someone dragging a fingernail down the wood. Then silence. His phone buzzed again. "Don't turn off your phone," Daniel replied. "What?" "Because I need to know you're still alive." Daniel stared at that sentence. Still alive. Not safe. Not okay. Alive. Then the lights went out. The bedroom became completely black. Daniel heard a sound from the hallway. A quiet laugh. He turned on his phone flashlight. The bedroom door was still closed. The chair was still pressed against it. But something had changed. There was a piece of paper lying on the floor beneath the door. Daniel slowly walked toward it. He crouched, picked it up. It was a photograph. A photograph of the bedroom, taken from inside the room. Daniel's blood ran cold. The picture showed him sleeping. His face was visible. The same bed, the same lamp, the same room. But Daniel had only arrived 3 hours earlier. He turned the photograph over. Written on the back were 4 words. "You sleep very deeply." Daniel dropped it. Then came a knock. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. The voice whispered, "Open the door, Daniel." He didn't answer. The voice became louder. "I know you're scared." Daniel backed toward the window. Then he heard something behind him. A tiny metallic click. He slowly turned. The window latch had moved. It was open. Daniel hadn't touched it. Cold mountain air entered the room. He stared at the open window, then looked down. The window was on the 2nd floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, nothing. He couldn't climb out. But then he noticed something strange. The curtains were moving, not because of the wind, because something was behind them. Daniel stood frozen. The curtain moved again. Slowly, a human hand appeared. Daniel screamed. He grabbed the lamp and swung it toward the curtain. The hand disappeared. The curtain fell still. Daniel rushed toward the bedroom door. He pulled the chair away, unlocked the door, and ran. He sprinted down the hallway. The front door was only 15 feet away. He could see it. He could reach it. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Running, Daniel grabbed the handle. Pulled. The door opened. He stumbled outside. Cold air hit his face. He ran toward the road without looking back. Then headlights appeared. A police cruiser turned into the driveway. 2 officers jumped out. Daniel screamed, "Someone's inside." The officers immediately moved toward the house. One of them asked, "Where?" Daniel pointed. "Bedroom." He was in the house. The officers entered. Daniel waited outside. 1 minute, 2, 5. Finally, one officer came back. His expression was strange. Daniel asked, "Did you find him?" The officer shook his head. "No." Daniel felt confused. He was right there. The officer looked at the house. "Sir, there's a problem." "What?" The officer held up a flashlight. "There's only one bedroom." Daniel stared. "No, there are 2. The officer shook his head. "We checked the property records. The house has always had 1 bedroom." Daniel's mouth went dry. He looked back at the house, the hallway, the windows, the door, the room he had slept in. The officer continued, "There's a storage room at the end of the hall, but it's been sealed for years." Daniel whispered, "That was my bedroom." The officer looked at him. "No." Then he pointed. "That room doesn't exist." Daniel didn't understand until they went back inside. The door Daniel had locked was still there. But when the officer opened it, there was no bedroom, only a narrow storage room filled with old furniture. No bed, no lamp, no window, no photographs, nothing. Daniel stood in the doorway, unable to speak. Then he noticed something on the floor. A black duffel bag, the same one he'd seen beneath his bed. The officer opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Different guests, different years, different rooms. But every photograph showed someone sleeping. Some were dated 5 years earlier, some 10. One was dated only 3 months ago. The officer picked up another photograph. His face changed. Daniel asked, "What?" The officer handed it to him. It showed Daniel, standing outside the Airbnb, taken that same evening. But Daniel hadn't noticed anyone watching him. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten sentence. "Next time, don't leave the door unlocked." Daniel looked toward the dark hallway. Then his phone vibrated. A notification from Airbnb. "Your host has sent you a message." He opened it. The message was from the real host. Only 4 words. "Did you check upstairs?" Daniel slowly looked toward the ceiling. There was a faint sound above them. A footstep, then another. The officer raised his flashlight. Daniel whispered, "But you said there was no upstairs." The officer didn't answer, because from directly above them, someone began walking, slowly, back and forth, across a floor that wasn't supposed to exist. Step, 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 and then a voice came through the ceiling. Soft, almost amused. "Daniel." The officer immediately reached for his radio. Daniel backed toward the front door, and the voice whispered one final sentence. "You forgot your bag." Story 2. The house that wasn't empty. The second story came from a woman named Rachel, who claimed she would never stay in an Airbnb again. She had traveled alone before. Hotels never bothered her. Neither did cheap motels, crowded airports, or driving through unfamiliar towns at night. What frightened her was the fact that the house she rented that weekend was supposed to be completely empty. And yet, on her second night there, she heard someone breathing beneath her bed. Rachel booked the property for a 4-day trip to attend a wedding. The house was located in a quiet rural area about 20 minutes outside the city. It looked perfect in the listing. White wooden exterior, large windows, a covered porch, a small backyard surrounded by trees. The photographs made the place look warm and comfortable. The description said, "Private entire home, no shared spaces, quiet neighborhood, perfect for peaceful stays." There were more than 100 reviews. Almost all were positive. Rachel booked it without hesitation. When she arrived on Friday afternoon, she immediately noticed how quiet the neighborhood was. Too quiet, perhaps. There were only a handful of houses on the road, and most of them were hidden behind trees. She parked in the driveway and entered using the keypad code provided by the host. The house smelled faintly of dust and old wood, but everything looked clean. The living room had a large gray sofa. The kitchen was modern. The bedroom had a huge wooden bed. There was even a little welcome basket on the kitchen counter. Rachel took a picture and sent it to her sister. "This place is actually really cute." Her sister replied, "Don't get murdered." Rachel laughed. She had no idea how accurate that joke would become. That evening, she went to the wedding rehearsal dinner. She returned around 11:30 p.m. The house was completely dark. Rachel unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Nothing seemed unusual. She turned on the lights. Then she noticed something. The kitchen cabinet underneath the sink was open. She was certain she had closed it. She walked over and pushed it shut. Then she shrugged. Old houses shifted. Doors moved. Cabinets sometimes didn't close properly. She went upstairs, took a shower, changed into pajamas, and went to bed. At 2:17 a.m., she woke up. She didn't know why. There had been no noise, no nightmare, no phone notification. She simply opened her eyes. The room was dark. Rachel stared at the ceiling. Then she heard it. A faint sound. Breathing. She held her breath. The sound stopped. She waited. Nothing. Rachel slowly pulled the blanket higher. Then she heard it again. Inhale. A pause. Exhale. The sound seemed to be coming from beneath the bed. Rachel's entire body became rigid. She didn't move. She listened. Inhale. Exhale. Someone was breathing. Under her bed. Rachel reached for her phone. Her hand trembled as she turned on the flashlight. She pointed it toward the floor. The space beneath the bed was completely dark. She could see nothing. Then something moved. A shadow. Rachel screamed. She jumped out of bed and ran into the hallway. She didn't stop until she reached the stairs. She called the host. No answer. She called again. Nothing. Then she called the police. While waiting, she stood outside in the cold wearing only pajamas and a jacket. When the police arrived, Rachel told them everything. 2 officers entered the house. They searched every room. Closets, bathroom, kitchen, garage, basement. Finally, they checked underneath the bed. Nothing. No person. No animal. Nothing. One officer told Rachel, "You probably heard the heating system." Rachel shook her head. "I know what breathing sounds like." The officer didn't argue. They searched again. Still nothing. Rachel decided to stay at a hotel for the night. The next morning, she returned to the Airbnb. She almost canceled the rest of the trip, but the host apologized and offered to refund one night. The host also told her, the house has never had any security issues. Rachel wanted to believe her, so she returned. During the day, everything seemed normal. She went shopping, visited the wedding venue, had lunch with friends. By sunset, she had almost convinced herself that the previous night had been a dream. Then she noticed something. There were muddy footprints in the hallway. Small footprints, bare feet. They began near the back door, crossed the kitchen, went upstairs, and stopped outside her bedroom. Rachel immediately called the host. The host sounded confused. "Are you sure those are footprints?" Rachel said, "Yes." The host paused, then asked, "Did you leave the back door unlocked?" "No." Another pause. "Are you absolutely sure?" Rachel checked. The back door was locked. She took photographs and sent them to the host. The host didn't reply for several minutes. Then, "Leave the house." Rachel stared at the message. "What?" No response. She called. The host didn't answer. "Hakil kap tiapek." She walked toward the front door. Then she heard something upstairs. A drawer opening. Rachel froze. The sound came again. Scrape. Then a drawer closing. Someone was upstairs. She quietly stepped outside. She called the police again. This time, they arrived within minutes. The officers searched the house. Again, nobody was found. But one officer noticed something strange. The attic access panel was slightly open. He pulled it down. A ladder unfolded. The officer climbed up. Rachel waited below. A few seconds later, she heard him say, "Mom." "What?" "You need to see this." Rachel didn't want to, but she followed him. The attic was cramped and dusty. There were old boxes everywhere. Christmas decorations, broken furniture, old clothes. The officer shined his flashlight around, then stopped. There was a small mattress in the corner. Beside it were empty water bottles, food wrappers, a blanket, and a portable phone charger. Someone had been living there. Rachel felt sick. She asked, "How long?" The officer didn't know. Then he found something else. A notebook. The first page contained dates, names, descriptions, dozens of entries, different guests. The officer turned the pages. Some entries were several months old. Some were years old. Rachel's name appeared near the back. Beside it was the date she checked in. And underneath, sleeps alone. Rachel's stomach dropped. The officer immediately ordered her outside. Police searched the entire property. They found no one, but they discovered a hidden access door inside the attic. It led to a narrow space between the walls. That space connected to the bedroom. Rachel's bedroom. The person had been able to enter and leave without using the main doors. The police believe someone had been secretly living inside the property for months, possibly longer. But the strangest discovery came later. The police checked the home's security system. The property had cameras outside. The host had access to them. The footage showed Rachel arriving on Friday. It showed her leaving for the wedding. It showed her returning. Then, at 2:13 a.m., the camera facing the backyard captured something. A man stepped out from behind the house. He looked directly into the camera. Then he walked toward the bedroom window. The timestamp was 4 minutes before Rachel woke up. The police zoomed in. The man's face was partially visible. He was wearing a dark hood, but there was something unusual. He wasn't looking at the house. He was looking directly at the camera, as if he knew exactly where it was. Then he raised one hand and waved. The footage ended. The police searched the surrounding area. They found no one. Rachel left the Airbnb immediately. She stayed at a hotel for the rest of her trip. She later contacted Airbnb and provided all the evidence. The listing was removed. The host stopped responding. For months, Rachel tried to forget what happened. Eventually, she succeeded, until one evening. Nearly 6 months later, Rachel received a message from an unknown number. There was no name, no profile picture, just one sentence. "You shouldn't have left so early." Rachel immediately blocked the number. Then another message arrived from a different number. "I like watching you sleep." She contacted the police. They traced the number. It was unregistered. Nothing came of it. Rachel changed her phone number, moved apartments, and eventually tried to move on. But several weeks later, something happened that convinced her the person hadn't simply disappeared. She received an email from Airbnb. It was an automated notification. The subject line said, "Thanks for being a great guest." Rachel opened it. There was nothing unusual until she saw the property name. It was the same Airbnb, the house she had stayed in. The email said, "Your recent stay was rated by the host." Rachel hadn't stayed there recently. She hadn't booked the property again. But when she opened the review, she saw something impossible. The host had left her 5 stars and written, "Rachel was quiet, respectful, and slept very deeply." Rachel stared at the screen. She knew the host hadn't written that, because the host had told police she had never written the review. Then Rachel noticed the date. The review had been posted 3 days earlier. She checked the Airbnb listing. The property was still active. Different photographs, different description, different host name, but the address was identical. Rachel called the police. She sent them screenshots. Then she did something she wishes she had never done. She opened the listing photographs. The new photos showed the bedroom. The same wooden bed, the same curtains, the same nightstand. But in one photograph, something was visible in the mirror. A dark figure standing behind the camera. Rachel zoomed in. The image became blurry, but she could see the face. It was the same man from the security footage. The person who had been living inside the walls. And beneath the photograph was a new guest review. Someone named Jason had written, "Beautiful house, very quiet, love the privacy." Rachel clicked the date. Jason had checked in 2 nights earlier, and according to the listing, he was still there. Rachel immediately called the police. They went to the property. The house was empty. Jason was gone. His car was still in the driveway. His luggage was still upstairs. His wallet was on the kitchen counter. His phone was charging beside the bed. But Jason himself was nowhere. The police searched the attic, the hidden passage, the basement, the surrounding woods. Nothing. Then one officer noticed something underneath the bed. A small black notebook. Inside were dozens of names. Every person who had stayed there during the previous several years. Some had check-in dates. Some had check-out dates. But beside certain names was a single word. Watch. The final page contained only one entry. Rachel. Under her name was another sentence. She looked under the bed. And beneath that, next time she won't. Rachel never stayed in another Airbnb. But there was one detail about the story she never publicly explained. The police asked her how she knew the breathing was coming from underneath the bed. Rachel said she didn't, because when she had turned on a flashlight that first night, she had looked underneath the bed, and she hadn't seen a person. She had only seen darkness. But the next morning, when police searched the room, they found something caught beneath the mattress. A strand of black hair. And beside it, a tiny handwritten note. You were looking in the wrong direction. Story 3. The locked basement. When Emily booked the Airbnb, the first thing she noticed was the basement door. It was at the end of the hallway. A plain wooden door with a brass handle. There was no lock visible from the outside. Just a small handwritten note taped across it. Do not open. Emily thought it was strange. Not frightening, just strange. She had rented the house for a weekend because she needed somewhere quiet to stay while attending a friend's wedding. The listing described the property as a renovated farmhouse. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, large kitchen, private yard, fireplace. The photographs looked beautiful. The house was surrounded by trees and fields, far away from the noise of the city. The host had excellent reviews. More than 200 guests had stayed there. Nobody mentioned the basement. Emily arrived Friday evening, just before sunset. The host had sent her the entry code and a short message. Make yourself comfortable. Everything you need is inside. Emily entered. The house looked exactly like the photographs. Clean, warm, quiet. She put her suitcase upstairs and explored the rooms. Then she found the basement door. She stood in front of it. The handwritten note was old. The edges had curled. She touched the handle. Locked. Emily laughed quietly. Okay. She wasn't interested in whatever was down there. At least, not yet. That night, she went to dinner with her friend. When she returned around midnight, the house was dark. She turned on the hallway light. The basement door was still closed, but the note was gone. Emily stopped. She stared at the door. She was certain the note had been there earlier. She checked the floor. Nothing. She looked around the hallway. Nothing. She assumed the host had removed it. Maybe the warning was no longer necessary. Emily went upstairs. She went to bed. At 3:04 a.m., she woke up to the sound of footsteps. Someone was walking downstairs. Emily opened her eyes. She listened. Step, step, step. The footsteps were slow, heavy, coming from the hallway below. Emily sat up. Her first thought was that someone had entered the house. She grabbed her phone. The front door was locked. She checked the Airbnb app. No messages. Then she heard the footsteps stop. Silence. Emily waited. Nothing. She turned on her bedroom light. Slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty. She walked downstairs. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. The front door was still locked. Then she saw the basement door. It was open. Emily froze. She had locked it earlier. She was certain. She slowly walked closer. Cold air came through the opening. The basement was completely dark. Emily stood at the top of the stairs. Hello. No response. She immediately felt stupid. She turned around, then heard a voice from below. A woman's voice. Very quiet. Please. Emily froze. The voice came again. Don't leave me. Emily ran upstairs. She locked herself in the bedroom. Then she called the host. The host answered after several rings. Hello. Emily whispered. Someone is in the basement. There was silence. Then the host asked, Did you open the door? No. Another pause. Are you sure? Yes. The host's voice changed. She sounded frightened. Listen to me carefully. Emily sat on the bed. What? Do not go downstairs. I won't. Don't even go near the door. Emily looked toward the bedroom. What? The host took a breath, then said, The basement is supposed to be sealed. Emily's stomach tightened. What does that mean? The previous owner had it closed off. What? I don't know. The host sounded like she was trying not to cry. There's no reason anyone should be down there. Emily asked. Then who was talking? The host didn't answer. Instead, she said, Leave the house. Emily immediately grabbed her suitcase. She didn't bother packing everything. She went downstairs. The basement door was closed again. Emily stopped. She stared at it. Then something knocked from the other side. Knock. Emily backed away. Another knock. Knock. Then a third. Knock. She ran to the front door. But before she could open it, her phone buzzed. The host had sent a message. Don't leave through the front door. Emily stared at it. She typed. What? The host replied. Someone is outside. Emily slowly looked through the front window. A figure was standing across the road. A man, motionless, watching the house. Emily stepped away from the window. Her phone rang. The host. Emily answered. The host whispered, "Are you still inside?" "Yes." "Good." "What do you mean good?" "I need you to stay upstairs." Emily looked toward the staircase. "Why?" "Because if he's outside, he can't get in." Emily swallowed. Then came a sound. From a basement. The door slammed open. Emily screamed. She ran upstairs. She locked herself in the bathroom. Her phone was still connected to the host. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," the host whispered. "What do I do?" "Stay quiet." Emily crouched behind the bathtub. She heard footsteps downstairs. Slow, heavy. Someone was walking through the house. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Emily could hear breathing. Then the person started walking upward. 1 step, 2, 3. Emily covered her mouth. The host whispered through the phone. "Emily, yes. I need you to listen." "What?" "If he reaches the bathroom." Emily waited. The host continued. "Tell him the basement is open." Emily's blood ran cold. "What?" "Tell him the basement is open." "What?" The host didn't answer. The footsteps continued. 5 steps, 6, 7, then stopped outside the bathroom. Emily could see the shadow beneath the door. Someone was standing there. A man's voice whispered, "Emily." She nearly screamed. The voice sounded familiar. It was the voice of her friend who was supposed to be at the wedding. Her friend who lived 3 hours away. Emily whispered, "Who are you?" The voice answered, "Open the door." Emily didn't move. Then the voice changed. It became deeper, rougher, almost mechanical. "Open the door." Emily's phone buzzed. The host sent a message. "Now." Emily didn't understand. The bathroom door handle began turning. She whispered, "The basement is open." Silence. The handle stopped. Then the footsteps moved away. Down the stairs. Emily waited. 1 minute. 2. Then she heard the basement door slam. The house became silent. The host spoke. "Go." Emily opened the bathroom door. She ran downstairs. The front door was unlocked. She opened it and sprinted outside. The man across the road was gone. Emily ran to her car. She started the engine. Then she looked back at the house. The upstairs bathroom light was still on. A shadow appeared behind the window. Emily drove away. She didn't stop until she reached a gas station 20 miles away. She called the police. When officers arrived, they went with her back to the property. The house was empty. No stranger. No evidence of forced entry. No footprints outside. Nothing. Then one officer found the basement. He opened the door. The stairs descended into darkness. At the bottom was a concrete room. Empty, except for a chair. A small wooden chair. Facing the wall, the officer shined his flashlight around. There was writing on the wall. Hundreds of names. Some were crossed out. Others had dates beside them. Emily saw her own name. Emily, 2026. She stepped backward. "That's impossible." The officer looked at the wall, then at her. "You said you arrived tonight?" "Yes." The officer pointed at another name. A man's name. Under was a date from 11 years earlier. Then another. Another. All previous guests. The host later admitted that the house had been involved in a disappearance years earlier. A woman named Laura had rented it for 3 nights. She vanished. Her car was found nearby. Her belongings were still inside. The basement had been searched. Nothing was found. The case was never solved. But Emily discovered something even stranger. The Airbnb host wasn't the first host. She had purchased the property only 8 months earlier. Before that, it belonged to an elderly couple. And according to the police, the elderly couple had claimed for years that they heard someone walking inside the basement. They eventually sealed the door, but they never explained why. The host told Emily she had found the basement door unlocked 2 weeks before Emily's stay. She had hired someone to inspect it. The inspector refused. He told her, "Whatever is down there doesn't belong to the house." Emily didn't understand what he meant until the police searched the property records. There was no basement listed on the original architectural plans. The house had never officially had one. The room existed physically, but not on paper. The police eventually removed the floorboards. Beneath the concrete was an old wooden hatch. Underneath the hatch was a narrow tunnel. The tunnel extended beneath the backyard. At the end was another room. Inside were dozens of personal objects. Watches, jewelry, photographs, wallets, phones, keys, things belonging to previous guests. Some are decades old. The police believe someone had been using the tunnel to enter the house, but they never found the person. Emily thought that would be the end. It wasn't. 3 months later, she received a package. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed the Airbnb house, taken at night. The upstairs bathroom window was visible. Emily's window. She turned the photograph over. There were 5 words written on the back. "You left the door open." Emily immediately called the police. They told her to preserve the photograph. Then she noticed something in the picture. A figure was standing inside the upstairs window, watching the person taking the photograph. Emily zoomed in. The figure was standing exactly where she had been hiding in the bathroom, but there was something impossible about it. The photograph had been taken from outside the house. At the exact moment Emily was inside the bathroom, and she had been completely alone. She turned the photograph over again. Under the first sentence was another line. This one was written in different handwriting. The basement wasn't the dangerous part. Emily never returned to the property. The Airbnb listing disappeared several months later. But according to the final police report, the basement door was found open during a later inspection. And on the floor at the bottom of the stairs, someone had written a new name. Not Emily's, not Laura's. The name of the police officer who had searched the basement. Beside it was a date, 3 days in the future. The officer was still alive when the report was filed, but 3 days later, he disappeared. His car was found parked outside the abandoned Airbnb. The driver's door was open. His phone was still inside, and from the basement, police heard 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Nobody ever opened the door again. By the time Marcus arrived at the Airbnb, it was already raining. Not the gentle kind of rain that made a country house feel cozy. This was heavy rain, the kind that turned the road into mud and made the trees bend violently in the wind. His GPS had lost signal nearly 20 minutes earlier. The host had warned him about that. Don't worry if your phone loses service. The house has Wi-Fi. Marcus had laughed when he read the message. Now, sitting alone in his car, he wasn't laughing. He looked at the address again. There was only one house visible. A 2-story farmhouse sitting at the end of a narrow dirt road. No neighbors, no estretrits, no other cars. Just the house, the trees, and darkness. Marcus had booked it because he wanted somewhere peaceful for the weekend. He was exhausted from work. He wanted to disappear for a couple of days. The Airbnb had almost perfect reviews. 187 ratings. 4.9 stars. The listing described it as a private countryside retreat for guests seeking peace, privacy, and complete escape from the outside world. That last sentence should have bothered him. Instead, it made the place more attractive. Marcus grabbed his suitcase and ran through the rain. The front door unlocked with the code the host had sent him. Inside, the house was warm, almost unnaturally warm. He closed the door behind him. Immediately, he noticed a smell. Something faint, sweet, almost like old perfume. He put his suitcase down. "Hello." His voice echoed through the house. No response. The host had told him nobody would be there. He walked through the living room. Everything looked clean. A fireplace, old furniture, a television, family photographs on the walls. Marcus stopped in front of one. It showed a family standing outside the house. A man, a woman, 2 children. The photograph looked old, maybe 30 years old. Marcus looked closer. Something felt strange. The house behind the family was exactly the same. Same windows, same porch, same front door. He wondered if the property had been in the family for generations. Then he noticed something else. One of the children had been scratched out of the photograph. Not accidentally. Someone had taken a sharp object and repeatedly scratched the child's face until it was almost impossible to see. Marcus moved away. He decided not to think about it. He unpacked, made coffee, turned on the television. By midnight, the storm had become worse. Rain hammered against the windows. The wind shook the walls. Marcus was about to go upstairs when his phone buzzed. A message from the host. "Everything okay?" Marcus replied, "Yes, just arrived. Beautiful place. The host answered, "Good. Make sure you lock the bedroom door tonight." Marcus frowned. "What?" The host didn't respond. A minute later, another message arrived. "Old house. Doors sometimes open by themselves." Marcus smiled. That explanation made sense. He went upstairs. There were 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom was at the end of the hallway. He entered, locked the door, and went asleep. At 2:41 a.m., he woke up. Someone was walking downstairs. Marcus sat upright. He listened. Step, step, step. Slow footsteps, moving across the living room. He checked his phone. No messages. He waited. The footsteps stopped. Then he heard a child's voice. Very faint. From downstairs. "Mom!" Marcus froze. A second voice answered. A woman's voice. "Go back to bed." Marcus stared at the bedroom door. He knew he was alone. He had seen the entire house. There was nobody downstairs. He quietly got out of bed. He opened the bedroom door. The hallway was dark. The footsteps had stopped. Marcus walked toward the stairs. Then he heard the child's voice again. "Mom!" This time it came from directly beneath him. He stopped. A woman's voice replied. "He's here." Marcus felt every muscle in his body tighten. He stepped backward. Then something moved at the bottom of the stairs. A small shadow. It looked like a child. Marcus whispered, "Hello." The shadow disappeared. He ran back into his bedroom, locked the door, and called the host. No answer. He called again. Still nothing. Then a message appeared. "Don't speak to them." Marcus stared at the screen. His hands became cold. He typed, "Ooh." The host responded, "The people downstairs." Marcus swallowed. "There is nobody downstairs." The host replied, "I know." Marcus stared at the message. Then came another. "They aren't supposed to be there." A sound came from the hallway. A child's footsteps. Running. "Top! Top! Top! Top!" They stopped outside Marcus's bedroom. A tiny hand touched the doorknob. Marcus backed away. The handle slowly moved. He pressed his body against the door. The child whispered, "Can I come in?" Marcus said nothing. The child asked again, "Please." Marcus covered his mouth. Then the voice changed. It became an adult man's voice. "Open the door." Marcus's phone vibrated. The host. "Whatever happens, don't open it." The doorknob stopped moving. Silence. Then 3 knocks. Knock. 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 Marcus waited. Nothing happened. Eventually, he fell asleep sitting against the door. At sunrise, he woke up. The hallway was empty. He slowly opened the door. Nothing. He went downstairs. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. There were muddy footprints across the living room. Small footprints, like a child's. They led from the front door to the staircase. Marcus followed them. They went upstairs, straight to his bedroom, and stopped. He took photographs. Then he messaged the host. No response. He decided to leave. But when he reached the front door, he noticed something. The door was locked, not with the keypad, with an old deadbolt. Marcus tried unlocking it. Nothing. He tried the keypad. The screen was dead. No lights. No response. He checked his phone. No service. The Wi-Fi was gone too. He was trapped. Marcus began searching for another exit. He found a back door. Locked. Kitchen window. Painted shut. Bauschament door. Locked. He tried calling emergency services. No signal. Then he heard a sound upstairs. A woman crying. Marcus looked toward the ceiling. The crying became louder. It sounded like someone was standing directly above him. He grabbed a kitchen knife, then slowly climbed the stairs. The crying stopped. The hallway was empty. He checked each room. Nothing. Then he heard the crying again. From inside the master bedroom. Marcus opened the door. Empty. The sound seemed to be coming from the closet. He opened it. Nothing. But behind the clothes was a small wooden panel. Marcus pulled it. It opened. Behind it was a narrow passage. He shined his phone flashlight inside. The passage disappeared into darkness. Marcus remembered the muddy footprints. He stepped inside. The passage was barely wide enough for one person. It smelled of damp earth. After several meters, he found a second door. He opened it. It led into a tiny room. There was a mattress, blankets, empty food containers, bottles of water. Someone had been living there. Marcus felt sick. On the wall were dozens of photographs. Guests, people sleeping, people eating, people watching television, people showering. Every photograph had been taken secretly. Marcus recognized several rooms: the living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom. Then he saw one photograph that made him stop breathing. It was a photograph of Marcus, taken earlier that morning. He was standing downstairs, looking at the locked front door. He had been completely alone. Someone had been watching him. Recently, very recently. Marcus stepped backward. Then he heard breathing behind him. He turned. Nobody. But the door he'd entered through was slowly closing. He rushed toward it. Before it shut, he saw something scratched into the wall. A sentence. "They don't live here." Marcus pushed the door open. Then he heard a voice behind him. A child's voice. "We do." Marcus ran. He didn't care where the passage led. He sprinted through the darkness. He eventually found another door. He opened it. He stumbled into the basement. The basement was enormous, much larger than the house above. There were dozens of shelves, boxes, old furniture, photographs, personal belongings, and at the center of the room, a table. On it were guest records, names, dates, photographs. Marcus looked through them. Every person who had stayed at the Airbnb was listed. Some had notes beside their names. Stayed one night, heard voices, saw child, left early, did not leave. Marcus stopped. There were 6 names with the final note. Did not leave. He recognized one. It belonged to a woman whose review was still visible on Airbnb. She had written, "Wonderful stay. Very peaceful." Marcus suddenly understood. The positive reviews weren't necessarily from guests. Some may have been written by whoever controlled the property. He grabbed his phone. Still no service. Then he heard footsteps coming from upstairs. Marcus switched off his flashlight. He crouched behind a shelf. Someone entered the basement. Footsteps slowly descended the stairs. Marcus could hear breathing. Then a man's voice. "Marcus." He closed his eyes. The person continued, "You weren't supposed to find this." Marcus remained silent. The footsteps moved closer, then stopped. The man whispered, "I can't hear you." Marcus suddenly saw a shadow move across the floor. He waited. Then a loud crash came from upstairs. The man turned. Marcus used the opportunity. He ran. He sprinted toward the basement stairs. The man shouted behind him. Marcus reached the first floor. The front door was still locked. He grabbed a chair, smashing the window beside the door. Glass exploded. Marcus climbed through. He fell onto the wet grass, then ran toward his car. The engine started. He drove. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. He drove until he reached a town with cell service. The police were called. Officers went to the property. But when they arrived, something was wrong. The house was empty. Completely empty. No furniture. No photographs. No hidden passage. No basement. The police showed Marcus the property. It looked abandoned. Broken windows. Dust everywhere. No electricity. No running water. One officer asked, "Are you sure this is the same house?" Marcus said yes. He showed them his photographs. But when they checked his phone, the photographs were gone. All of them, except one. The photograph of Marcus standing outside the house. The strange thing was that it had been taken from inside an upstairs window. The police searched the property records. The house had been vacant for nearly 4 years. The owner had died. The property had never been registered as an Airbnb. Marcus showed them the listing. It was gone. The host account had disappeared. The payment was refunded. There was no record of the reservation. Even the email confirmation had vanished. Marcus thought he had imagined everything. Until 2 weeks later, he received an envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed the farmhouse. There were people standing on the porch. A man, a woman, 2 children, and Marcus standing beside them. He turned the photograph over. There was writing on the back. "You left before we could introduce you." Below that was another sentence. "Next guest arrives Friday." Marcus reported it. The police kept the photograph. Nothing happened until Friday. Another man booked an Airbnb in the countryside. The property looked beautiful, quiet, private, perfect for a peaceful weekend. The first review on the listing said, "Amazing house, very quiet at night." The reviewer was Marcus. But Marcus had never written it. And when a new guest arrived that Friday evening, he found a handwritten note taped to the basement door. For simple words, "Do not open this. At exactly 2:41 a.m., he woke up. Someone was walking downstairs. Step, step, step. Then a child's voice whispered, "Mom." A woman's voice answered, "He's here," and somewhere inside the walls. Marcus was still waiting. When Sarah booked the Airbnb, she wasn't looking for anything unusual. She had just started a new job in another city and needed somewhere to stay for 2 weeks while she searched for a permanent apartment. The Airbnb looked perfect. A small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. Private entrance, private bathroom, kitchen, fast Wi-Fi, and most importantly, it was cheap. The host profile showed more than 300 reviews. Almost every guest had given 5 stars. The host was named Daniel. His profile photograph showed a smiling man in his 40s. His description said, "I love meeting travelers and making sure my guests feel at home." Sarah booked the apartment on a Monday. Daniel sent her a message almost immediately. "Welcome, Sarah. You'll love the place." She replied, "Thanks. Looking forward to it." A few seconds later, another message appeared. "Your flight arrives at 8:20 p.m., correct?" Sarah stopped. She checked her reservation. Yes, her flight did arrive at 8:20, but she hadn't told him. She assumed Airbnb had shared her itinerary. Maybe the host could see the arrival information, so she didn't think much about it. That evening, her flight landed. She took a taxi to the apartment. The building was old, but well-maintained. Daniel had sent her the door code. Sarah entered. The apartment looked exactly like the photographs. Small, clean, comfortable. She put her suitcase down, then noticed a welcome note on the kitchen counter. "Make yourself comfortable. If you need anything, just ask." Sarah smiled. She took a shower, ordered food, watched television. At around midnight, she went to bed. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Good night, Sarah." She stared at it. She hadn't told him she was going to bed. She replied, "Good night." Then another message. "Sleep well." Sarah put the phone down. A strange feeling came over her. She looked around the bedroom. Nothing. She told herself she was being paranoid. Then she fell asleep. At 3:12 a.m., Sarah woke up. Her bedroom door was open. She was certain she had closed it. She sat up. The hallway was dark. She reached for her phone. There was another message. "You should keep your door locked." Sarah's heart began pounding. She typed, "What?" No response. Then she heard something in the kitchen. A cabinet opening. Sarah stayed in bed. She listened. Another cabinet. Then the refrigerator. Someone was in the apartment. She grabbed her phone and quietly locked the bedroom door. Then she called Daniel. He answered immediately. "Hello." Sarah whispered, "Someone is inside." Silence. Then Daniel said, "You're safe." "How do you know?" Another pause. "Because I can see the apartment." Sarah froze. "What?" Daniel said, "There's a security camera in the living room." Sarah's heart dropped. "You didn't tell me that. It's for security. You can't have cameras inside." Daniel didn't answer. Sarah whispered, "I'm calling the police." Daniel's voice suddenly became cold. "Don't." Sarah hung up. She called emergency services. Then she waited. The footsteps in the kitchen stopped. Silence. A minute later, someone knocked on her bedroom door. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Sarah didn't move. A man's voice said, "Sarah." She covered her mouth. It wasn't Daniel. The voice continued, "Open the door." Sarah waited. Then the footsteps moved away. She heard the front door open. Close. Silence. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They searched the apartment. Nobody was there. The front door was locked. The windows were locked. There were no signs of forced entry. But Sarah insisted someone had been inside. The officers checked the security camera. There was no camera. Not in the living room. Not anywhere. Sarah called Daniel. He didn't answer. The next morning, she contacted Airbnb. They told her the host had not registered any cameras inside the apartment. Sarah asked about the messages. The representative said, "Which messages?" Sarah showed them. The representative looked confused. According to Airbnb's records, Daniel had never sent those messages. The conversation history showed nothing unusual. Sarah's messages to Daniel were there. His replies were not. Sarah felt sick. She checked the apartment carefully. She looked behind furniture, inside closets, under the bed. Nothing. Then she noticed a tiny black object behind the television. It looked like a charger. She picked it up. It wasn't. It was a small camera. Sarah immediately contacted the police. They returned. The device was removed. They checked the apartment for others. They found 3 more. One in the living room, one facing the kitchen, one pointed directly at the bedroom. Sarah's hand shook. The police tried contacting Daniel. His phone was disconnected. His Airbnb profile disappeared. The apartment owner was contacted. She told police something strange. She had never heard of Daniel. She owned the building. The apartment had been empty for almost 6 months. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Then who gave me the keys? The owner didn't know. The police investigated. They discovered that someone had created several fake Airbnb listings using vacant apartments across the city. The same person rented them to travelers. The guests stayed for days or weeks. Hidden cameras recorded them. Nobody knew exactly how many victims there were. Sarah was moved to a hotel. She thought the nightmare was finally over. It wasn't. 3 days later, she received a text. Unknown number. You forgot something. Sarah blocked it. Another number sent a photograph. It showed her sleeping. The photograph had been taken inside the Airbnb. Sarah immediately contacted the police. They told her the camera might have transmitted old footage. But Sarah knew the photograph was different. She was wearing the same clothes she had worn the night before. The photograph had been taken recently. She checked the image metadata. The file had been created at 2:58 a.m. She had been awake in the hotel at that time. Someone had been watching her, or someone wanted her to believe they were. The next day, Sarah noticed a man standing across the street from her hotel. He wore a gray jacket, baseball cap, dark sunglasses. He stood beside a parked car. Sarah looked away. When she looked again, he was gone. She told the police. They advised her not to leave the hotel alone. That evening, someone knocked on her hotel room door. Sarah froze. She hadn't ordered anything. The knocking came again. Knock, knock, knock. She checked the peephole. Nobody. She called reception. The receptionist said, "No one has been sent to your room." Sarah backed away from the door. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't look through the peephole. Sarah's blood turned cold. She looked anyway. The hallway was empty. Then she noticed something. A small black camera had been attached to the ceiling directly above her door. Someone had installed it recently. Sarah called the police. Officers arrived. The camera was real. It was connected to a nearby Wi-Fi network, but they couldn't identify who controlled it. The next morning, Sarah checked out. She left the city. She stayed with family for several weeks. Eventually, things returned to normal. She changed her number, deleted social media, stopped using Airbnb, and tried to forget everything. Then, 6 months later, she received an email. The sender was Airbnb. The subject line said, "Your host has responded to your review." Sarah hadn't left a review. She opened it anyway. There was a message from Daniel. Sarah was a wonderful guest. Sarah stared at the screen. She scrolled. There was a second sentence. Very quiet. Then, she spent most nights alone. Sarah closed the email. She contacted Airbnb. They investigated. The account didn't exist. The message had never been sent. But there was something else. The email contained an attachment. A video. Sarah knew she shouldn't open it. She opened it anyway. The video showed the Airbnb apartment. The camera angle was from inside the bedroom. Sarah watched herself sleeping. The timestamp was from the night she stayed there. Then the camera moved. Slowly, someone had entered the room. The person stood beside her bed. Sarah could not see the face. The figure leaned toward her, then whispered, "She doesn't know I'm here." Sarah stopped the video. She was shaking. She replayed the final seconds. This time, she noticed something. The person in the video was wearing a gray jacket, the same jacket she had seen outside the hotel. Sarah called the police again. They traced the video file. It had been uploaded from a server located in another country. No useful lead. The case eventually went cold, but Sarah continued receiving strange messages. Every few months, always from different numbers. Always short. "Still remember me? You look peaceful. You should travel again." Then, almost a year after the Airbnb incident, Sarah received the message that finally made her understand. It arrived at 2:13 a.m. "I found your new address." Sarah immediately called the police. Before they arrived, another message appeared. This time, it contained a photograph. Sarah's apartment building, taken from across the street. She looked outside. There was nobody. Then she noticed something on the photograph. The picture had been taken from a higher angle. From above, she looked toward the roof. Nothing. The police arrived and searched the building. They found nothing. But one officer noticed a maintenance hatch near the roof. Inside was a small bag. The bag contained food, water, a blanket, a portable chargé, and a notebook. The notebook contained names, addresses, travel dates, hotels, Airbnb properties, hundreds of entries. Sarah's name was near the middle. Beside it was a note, good candidate. Below it, responds quickly. And beneath that, doesn't check locks. Sarah turned the page. The final entries were newer. People she didn't recognize. Some were traveling alone. Some had booked Airbnb properties. Some had hotel reservations. Then she saw the last entry. It had been written only 2 days earlier. A woman's name. Sarah recognized it. It was her younger sister. Sarah's blood ran cold. Her sister had recently told her she was planning a trip. She had booked an Airbnb. Sarah immediately called her. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. Then a message arrived from her sister's phone. Everything is perfect here. Sarah stared at it. Her sister never used that phrase. Another message appeared. The host is very nice. Sarah called the police. She gave them the address. Officers went to the property. The Airbnb was empty. No sister. No host. No lagi. But the front door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal. There was one bedroom, one bathroom, a small kitchen, and on the kitchen counter was a welcome note. The same handwriting Sarah remembered from her own Airbnb. Make yourself comfortable. Underneath were 4 more words. You are being watched. The police searched the entire property. They found a hidden room behind the bedroom wall. Inside were dozens of monitors. Each monitor showed a different apartment, hotel room, or Airbnb. Some feeds were live, others were recorded, and on one screen, Sarah saw herself, sitting at home. The camera angle showed her living room. She slowly turned toward the screen. Then the image changed. A new camera feed appeared. Her sister, sitting alone in a bedroom. Sarah screamed. The police looked at the monitor. The video was live. Her sister suddenly looked toward the camera. Then she whispered, "Sarah." The feed went black. The investigation that followed uncovered a network of people who had been secretly monitoring short-term rental guests for years. But the identity of the original person behind the operation was never discovered. Daniel was never found. His photograph turned out to be stolen from an unrelated man's social media account. And the most disturbing part was this. The apartment Sarah had rented had never belonged to Daniel. It had never even been listed on Airbnb. Someone had created the entire reservation specifically for her. They had chosen the apartment. They had chosen the dates. They had chosen her. Years later, Sarah still receives occasional emails from unknown addresses. Most contain nothing but a single sentence. You were one of our favorites. But the last email was different. It arrived yesterday. There was no text, only one attachment. A photograph. Sarah opened it. It showed her sitting at her desk. Taken from behind, she looked at the timestamp. 2:17 a.m. Sarah had been asleep at 2:17 a.m. And in the reflection of her computer screen, there was a man standing behind her, wearing a gray jacket, watching. The Airbnb guest who never checked out. The final story began with a reservation that should never have existed. It belonged to a man named Alex. Alex was 32 years old and worked remotely, which meant he traveled often. He had stayed in dozens of hotels and short-term rentals. He wasn't the kind of person who frightened easily. He believed most horror stories were exaggerated. So when he found an inexpensive Airbnb in a quiet coastal town, he didn't think twice. The property was an old house overlooking the ocean. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, private parking, large windows facing the water. The listing photographs were beautiful. The host profile was even better. Hundreds of reviews, nearly perfect rating. The description said, a peaceful home for guests who want to disconnect from the world. Alex booked 5 nights. The host sent him the usual instructions. Check in after 3 p.m. Check out before 11 a.m. Don't leave windows open. Keep the back gate locked. And one unusual instruction. Please don't use the upstairs bedroom. Alex thought that was strange. He messaged the host. Is there a problem with that room? The host replied, it's just not available to guests. Alex asked, can I lock it? The host answered, the door is already locked. That was the end of the conversation. Alex arrived at 4:30 p.m. The house looked exactly like the photographs. Beautiful, old, quiet. The ocean was visible from almost every window. He carried his bags inside. The first floor had a kitchen, living room, bathroom, and one bedroom. The stairs led to the second floor. At the top was a hallway. 3 doors. 2 were open. The third was locked. Alex remembered the host's message. He ignored it. That evening, he cooked dinner and watched the sunset. At 10 p.m., he heard something upstairs. A soft thump. Alex looked toward the ceiling. Then another thump. He assumed it was an old pipe. At midnight, he went to bed. He slept peacefully until 3:33 a.m. A sound woke him. Someone was walking upstairs. Alex sat up. He listened. Step, step, step. Slow footsteps coming from the locked bedroom. Alex grabbed his phone. No messages. He waited. The footsteps stopped. Then something dragged across the floor. Alex got out of bed. He walked into the hallway. The stairs were directly ahead. He climbed slowly. At the top, he saw the locked door. It was still closed, but a thin line of light appeared underneath it. Someone was inside. Alex whispered, "Hello." Silence. Then a woman's voice answered, "Please don't open the door." Alex froze. He stepped backward. The voice continued, "He'll hear you." Alex's heart started pounding. Who? No answer. Then the light beneath the door disappeared. The footsteps returned, but this time they were outside the room. They moved down the hallway, toward Alex. He ran downstairs, locked himself inside his bedroom, and called the host. The host answered immediately. Alex whispered, "Someone is upstairs." Silence. Then the host asked, "Did you open the door?" "No." "Good. Who was in there?" The host didn't answer. Alex demanded, "Who was in that room?" The host finally said, "Leave the house." Alex sat up. "What?" "Take your phone and leave. It's 3 in the morning." "I know. What's happening?" The host whispered, "Someone has been staying there." Alex stared at the phone. "What do you mean?" The host said, "I thought they were gone." A loud noise came from upstairs. Alex heard the woman scream. The host said, "Go now." Alex grabbed his keys. He opened the bedroom door. The stairs were dark. He ran toward the front door. Then he heard someone running upstairs behind him. He looked back. Nothing. He opened the front door. The porch was empty. He ran to his car, then stopped. Something was wrong. His car was gone. He had parked directly beside the house. Now, there was nothing. Alex stared at the empty driveway. His phone buzzed. A message from the host. "Don't go outside." Alex slowly looked back at the house. The front door was still open. The host called. Alex answered. "Where's my car?" The host said, "Alex, listen to me." "What? You don't have a car." Alex laughed nervously. "Of course I do." "No, you picked me up from the airport." Silence. The host whispered, "I didn't." Alex looked toward the road. There was no car, no street, no houses, only ocean and darkness. The host continued, "Alex, what's the last thing you remember before arriving?" He thought. He remembered landing at the airport, getting into a taxi, driving along the coast, arriving at the house. But suddenly something felt wrong. He couldn't remember the driver's face. He couldn't remember paying. He couldn't remember getting his suitcase out of the car. He looked at his luggage. The suitcase was open. Inside were his clothes, his laptop, his passport, everything. But something was missing. His wallet. Alex searched every pocket. Nothing. Then he noticed something else. His passport had no entry stamp. That wasn't unusual. But the issue was the date. The passport showed today's date. Alex checked his phone. The date was correct. Then he looked at the Airbnb reservation. 5 nights. Check-in, September 14th. He stared. Today's date was August 14th, 1 month earlier. His reservation was dated a month in the future. Alex felt sick. He called the host. "What's going on?" The host didn't answer. Instead, a new message appeared. "You are my guest." Alex looked toward the staircase. The locked bedroom door upstairs slowly opened. A woman stepped into the hallway. She looked pale, thin, exhausted. She was wearing old clothes. She stared at Alex, then whispered, "Are you real?" Alex couldn't speak. The woman came downstairs. She looked terrified. "What's your name?" "Alex." She closed her eyes. "No. What? You're Alex?" "Yes." She started crying. "I was told you were coming." "By who?" She pointed upstairs. "The host." Alex's phone buzzed. A new message. "Don't trust her." Alex showed the woman. She shook her head. "He always says that." "Who?" She looked toward the ceiling. "The man who owns this place." Alex asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Emily." Alex remembered the voice. The woman from the locked room. He asked, "How long have you been here?" Emily whispered, "I don't know. Days." She shook her head. "Weeks." Another shake. "Months." Emily looked toward the window. "I don't know what year it is." Alex felt a wave of fear. He checked her phone. The battery was dead. She had no identification. No wallet. Nothing. She said she had booked the Airbnb 6 months earlier. She arrived alone. Then she woke up one morning and discovered the doors wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't open. Her phone had no service. Food appeared in the kitchen every day. Sometimes she heard footsteps outside. Sometimes the host spoke through a hidden speaker. But she never saw him. Alex asked, "How did you get upstairs?" Emily pointed toward the locked bedroom. "There's a passage." She opened the door. Behind the bedroom was a narrow hallway inside the wall. It led down into the basement. Alex didn't want to follow, but Emily said, "It's the only way out." They entered. The passage was dark. The walls were covered in scratches. Some were names. Some were dates. Others were sentences. "I can't hear them. Don't sleep. The door isn't real." They reached the basement. It was much larger than Alex expected. There were shelves filled with belongings. Suitcases, shoes, phones, passports, wallets, photographs, dozens of them. Emily whispered. She opened the door. Behind the bedroom was a narrow hallway inside the wall. It led down into the basement. Alex didn't want to follow, but Emily said, "It's the only way out." They entered. The passage was dark. The walls were covered in scratches. Some were names. Some were dates. Others were sentences. "I can hear them. Don't sleep. The door isn't real." They reached the basement. It was much larger than Alex expected. There were shelves filled with belongings. Suitcases, shoes, phones, passports, wallets, photographs, dozens of them. Emily whispered. Everyone who came here left something behind. Alex picked up a wallet. Inside was an identification card that a man named Thomas. He recognized the name. Thomas had left a review on the Airbnb. "Beautiful property. Highly recommend." But according to Emily, Thomas had been there. He had never left. Alex felt sick. They searched for an exit. At the far end of the basement was a metal door. Emily said, "That's it." Alex tried the handle. Locked. Then they heard something. Footsteps above them. Slow. Heavy. Coming downstairs. Emily grabbed Alex's arm. "Hide." They crouched behind a shelf. A man entered the basement. Alex couldn't see his face. He wore a dark coat. He walked toward the shelves. Stopped. Then said, "I know you're here." Emily squeezed Alex's hand. The man continued, "You should have stayed upstairs." He walked closer. Alex saw his shoes. Black. Vet. Covered in sand. The man stopped directly in front of their hiding place. Then his phone rang. He answered. "Hello." A woman's voice came through. Alex recognized it. The host. The man said, "Yes." Pause. "No. Pause. They haven't left." Then, "They can't." The man walked away. Emily whispered, "Now." They ran. They sprinted toward the metal door. The man shouted behind them. Emily pulled a key from her pocket. She had found it weeks earlier. She pushed it into the lock. Turned. The door opened. Cold ocean air hit Alex's face. They emerged onto a narrow cliffside path behind the house. Emily ran. Alex followed. They didn't stop. They eventually reached a road. A truck stopped. The driver called the police. Within an hour, officers arrived. They returned to the property. But the house was empty. No man. No host. No hidden rooms. The basement was gone. The locked bedroom didn't exist. The house had only one floor. The officers thought Alex and Emily were confused. Then Alex showed them the wallet. The police checked the identification. Thomas had been reported missing 8 years earlier. Emily had also been reported missing. For years earlier, Alex was stunned. The officer asked, "When did you say you arrived at the house?" Alex answered, "Tonight." The officer looked at him. "Alex, that house has been abandoned for 7 years." Alex's blood turned cold. "No." The officer showed him photographs. The house was covered in weeds. Windows broken. Roof damaged. No electricity. No furniture. It was impossible. Yet Alex had spent the night there. He had eaten dinner, used the shower, charged his phone. He had even taken photographs. But when he checked his phone, all the photographs were gone. Except one. A picture of the ocean. In the distance was the house. And standing on the porch was Alex. The police couldn't explain it. They took both Alex and Emily to the station. Emily was reunited with her family, but she couldn't remember most of the years she had been missing. Alex's family was contacted. They told police something disturbing. Alex had been missing for 4 years. Alex refused to believe them. His phone said otherwise. His passport said otherwise. But his family showed him photographs. His driver's license had expired 3 years earlier. His bank account had been untouched. His apartment had been sold. His job had replaced him. Alex had disappeared 4 years ago. He had no memory of it. The final investigation uncovered something even stranger. The Airbnb listing Alex had used wasn't real. It had existed online for exactly 1 day. The reservation had been created 4 years earlier. On the same date, Alex disappeared. The host account had no profile history, no payment records, no identity verification, nothing. The police eventually concluded that Alex had been held somewhere against his will, but they couldn't explain where. They couldn't explain the missing years. And they couldn't explain Emily. She had been missing for 4 years. Yet when she was found, she looked almost exactly as she had the day she disappeared. Months passed. Alex tried to rebuild his life. He moved in with his family, started therapy, found a new job. He avoided anything related to Airbnb. He never traveled alone. Then one evening, almost a year after he returned, he received an email. There was no sender name, no subject, only an attachment, a photograph. Alex opened it. It showed the old coastal house. The house was abandoned, exactly as the police photographs had shown it. But someone was standing in one of the windows. A woman, Emily. Alex stared at the image. He called her immediately. She answered. Her voice was shaking. "Alex, did you send me something?" "No. Are you looking at this?" "Yes." There was silence. Then Emily whispered, "I got one too." Alex asked, "What does yours show?" Emily started crying. "Your house." Alex's heart stopped. "What?" "The house you're living in." Alex looked toward his hallway. Every light in his house was off. Then he heard a sound upstairs, a door closing. He whispered, "Emily, what?" "I'm not alone." The phone went silent. Alex heard footsteps above him. Slow, careful, coming down the stairs. His front door was locked. His windows were locked. There was nowhere for anyone to enter. Then his phone buzzed. One final message. "You checked out 4 years ago." Another message appeared. "But you never really left." Alex slowly looked toward the staircase. A figure stood at the top. He couldn't see the face. The figure raised one hand and pointed toward the bedroom. Alex heard a woman's voice behind him, very softly, the same voice he had heard inside the Airbnb. "Please don't open the door." Alex turned. There was nobody there. Then the bedroom door began to open by itself. Slowly, just a few inches, then more. Inside was darkness, and from somewhere in that darkness came the sound of an Airbnb notification. Ding! Alex looked at his phone. A new reservation had appeared. Guest, Alex. Check in tonight. Check out never. And underneath the reservation was one final sentence. Welcome home. End.